completely unhikeable places down in the Smokies. So I was worried, oh my gosh, are some of my friends stuck in shelters with, 4 or more feet of snow around them? So that was a concern. But so we kept hiking. We hiked about 11 miles that day through the snow, and by lunchtime there was about 6 inches on the ground, and then we went up elevation, and there was even more snow, a few more inches of snow, probably about 8 or 9 inches, and the wind was really coming in, and we were cold. I mean, we were starting to get very cold. We just had to have to keep moving out there. You can't sit around or you'll get chilly and possibly get hypothermic. So we kept moving, and we pushed it to a place called the Captain's. There's this guy, the Captain, great guy. He lets hikers stay on his property. He's at this thing called the Gathering in Damascus every year, Trail Days in Damascus every year, which is this huge hiker event. Very cool guy, and his house is next to the trail, and you take a zip line from the trail to his backyard, and you go camp on his property. So we were very fortunate that his house was there. He was home because of the conditions. He let us inside so we could dry our clothes, hang up our clothes, and sleep in a nice warm house. And apparently it kept snowing that night. So the next day we went out and we tried to hike. I think a mile. We hiked 1.2 miles, and it took us an hour. And Pace and I averaged about 3 miles an hour, if not more. If we're really good, we'll get really more than that. And so to take 3 times as long to do 1 mile was pretty, defeating. And we realized that we did not have enough time to get to the next shelter. So we actually
were you aware that it was a hurricane at this time?
Yes, we were, because even though the Captain did not have power in his house, he had a generator. And we were actually watching satellite on it, powered by the generator, and we're watching mostly, the news around South Manhattan and the Jersey Shore, which is, we're very, sad to see all that destruction. Everyone having such a hard time up there. But so we were aware that this was part of some larger weather system, and that's when we started getting snow accumulation or quantitative ideas of how much snow there was out there. What struck me was in Maryland, where there's very little elevation, they got to 25 inches near a part of the trail. West Virginia, they had 2 feet in multiple areas. Going down to the Smokies, the accumulation is pretty good. So we did know, that it was part of a larger, weather system. But so we spent one more night at the Captain's once we realized that we just weren't going to go anywhere that day, and we woke up got out there at a good hour the next day and really pushed it, full steam ahead, about 14 miles to the next shelter. But we really didn't know what we were in for. At the lower elevations, we were swamped with rhododendron trees that were laden with snow, and so they were hanging 3-4 feet lower than usual, all on the trail. So we're just, running through these snow-covered branches, trying to jump over, debris and fallen trees, hiking up the mountain.
Especially because I'm not positive, but the trees where you are probably still have leaves on them, correct?
Well, they did.
Yeah, and then that creates even more weight, so I'm sure the threat of falling branches is pretty high.
Absolutely. There were freshly splintered trees all over the place that had fallen from the weight of the snow, and then of course the melt and the ice accumulation, and then more cold. I mean, there were trees, some of them very large, all over the place that had fallen. And this is another reason we were so happy to be at the Captain's house, because if we couldn't get to a shelter, we didn't want to be out there.
Absolutely.
Number one, for the weather. Number two, for falling trees. It's a very real concern in that sort of weather. So we pushed on. We got to the ridge top, and we figured once we were up the ridge, we knew it was going to be colder, but we figured, the trail would be easier, minus the rhododendrons and the switchbacks to get up to the top. So we started down there, and we realized, you just can't see the damn trail. The only thing we could see were white blazes on the trees.
It doesn't help that they're white.
It doesn't help that they're white. It doesn't help that they're very far apart in this section and hadn't been painted in a while. Some of them you could barely tell they were even there anymore. That section of the trail was very poorly maintained. That was the section south of Wind Rock, Virginia. If any trail maintainers are listening, you need to get out there. You need to put up some fresh blazes. But then after a while, we couldn't even see the blazes. The trees had the actual trunks had been covered in snow, and so we couldn't see the blazes. The only thing we really had to go by were well, first of all, when we were going through the blazes, we couldn't find those for a while. So we were doing crisscrossing through the forest trying to find blazes, which was taking us twice as long as usual. And then eventually we couldn't find blazes anymore, and we literally had to look for chopped trees, because when a tree falls across the trail, at some point a maintainer comes out and they chainsaw or chop the tree so you can walk through it. But on either side of you, there's a chopped section of log. And so we had to actually look for those chopped sections of log, and through due diligence and just trying not to freak out, we eventually got to the shelter and experienced anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of snow on the way.
Now I know where I'm from back home in New York. They got a lot of wind. Was it just snow, or was there a lot of wind where you were too, making the problem even worse?
Absolutely. There were some breaks, but in general, the wind up on the ridge, the higher elevation, was pretty consistent, and it definitely, added to the temperature being so cold, the wind chill and all that. And then there were a few open field type things on the top of this ridge, and where the trees were not around, and then you were really exposed to the wind, and it was bad. And the shelter we stayed at last night, after that 14-mile day, the open face had like very few trees in front of it, and the wind was just whipping right into the shelter. But fortunately, Pace had a rain cover for his hammock.
Well, I guess it's better with to have one night of wind than to worry about a tree falling on you too, because I know that was probably the biggest problem in the storm.
Definitely, and we actually strung his
tent tarp.
Well, not a tent tarp. It's like a rain fly for
right.
For a hammock, but we stretched it out kind of like an animal skin, like a big buffalo skin, over the entrance to the shelter. So that not only kept us out of the wind, it definitely kept us a little bit warmer. And here's the best part, Jimmy, is so we're pretty much miserable at this point. We have very little food left because we've been out longer than we're supposed to have been, according to our how much rations we had with us. So we have hardly any food left. Throwing everything we have in the pot, trying to make something. And we set up our tents in his case his hammock, and we get in our bags, and we're just like, all right, we're just gonna go to sleep. Wake up tomorrow. It's gonna be miserable, but we just got to push into town. And then I hear this noise, this clamoring around. I'm like, what on earth is Pace doing walking around the tent? It's freezing. Like, why would he be out of his bag? And then we hear this hey guys, and it was this other guy, this guy Alabama, very cool dude. He just popped up out of nowhere. He just hiked up from town, got in there right at dark, and he was actually going to hike the opposite direction, and no one else had been out on the trail for the last 3 days at that point. We hadn't encountered anyone. We hadn't seen anyone's footsteps. We were the ones making the first tracks in the snow the whole way there. And then we run into this guy, and he's a great guy. We stayed up, chatted for a while, and then he took off this morning back the way we came. And we hope that he'll be okay. We think he will. He seems pretty capable, and he had our footprints to follow as well. So he should be good.
Well, this 3 days due to the storm is probably unforgettable. But one of the questions I want to ask you is, about halfway, do you have something looking back that you can say, that's my most memorable night on the trail, or is it still kind of sinking in?
Most